Hello everybody and welcome back to Watercolor Wednesday. So for this week's Watercolor Wednesday, I kind of wanted to discuss how I decide what to paint, for Watercolor Wednesday when I don't have something particular in mind that I'm not super passionate about creating, and also just some struggles that come along with creative block and creating things in general, if that makes sense. So this week I wasn't really sure what I wanted to make for Watercolor Wednesday. I knew that I wasn't really in the mood to go through the whole process of sketching something, drawing it digitally, and then printing it out and doing the whole transfer tracing process onto the watercolor paper, because that's what I usually do when I'm doing something like a face or something like that, just to make sure everything is in order, everything is good, all that stuff. So I knew I didn't want to do that. But I knew I also wanted to paint a face, because I almost always want to paint faces because it's just something I really enjoy. But I decided not to. I went through this folder I have on my phone called References. It's just photos I've taken that I think would be fun to paint, photos I've gotten online from royalty-free websites like Pixabay that I think would be fun to paint, or just photos I found scrolling through Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it may be. And so I went through that and nothing was really sparking my interest, which is something I'll do a lot of times if I'm like wondering what I want to paint, kind of know I want to paint something along the lines of a sunset or this or that, and don't really know exactly what I'm going for. I'll just look through that folder, and usually it is pretty helpful. But this week it was not. And then I started to realize that I really wanted to paint this kind of gradient, sunset, sky, galaxy type of thing. But I had just painted a pendant. For those of you who don't know, I also paint pendants. I sell them over on my Etsy. The link will be in the description. Anyways, I paint pendants, and I had just painted a pendant like that, and I really enjoyed making it. And so I wanted to do that same thing with watercolor, because for my pendants I usually use acrylic. But I was worried that it wouldn't be difficult enough or challenging enough, or it wouldn't take me long enough and I wouldn't have enough content for a video. And I kept kind of arguing with myself and going back and forth about it, and finally I was like, dude, that's what you want to paint, just paint it. Why are you giving yourself such a hard time about it? So I went ahead and I painted it, and that's what you see here, and I enjoyed it. It was fun. I have never really done a gradient like that before, and I thought that it was great. I enjoyed learning a little bit more about how those watercolors behave and how they blend together in that kind of manner, and what you have to do to make them blend together. I think I need better watercolor paper, because I find that my watercolor paper like gets mealy almost pretty easily. You know the way like your shirt, kind of like an old sweater, will get those tiny cotton balls on them. I find that my watercolor paper kind of does that the same. Anyways, I also want to talk about how when you're struggling to create something, when you don't have any inspiration, or there's nothing you really want to make but you feel like you need to paint something, there's a couple options. One is to do what I said and just kind of find something that sparks your interest and go for it. The other is just to take a break. At least in my experience, taking a break is super beneficial, to just be like, oh, my brain just needed a minute. For example, last semester when I went back to school, I had been creating a lot previous to that, and I'd been struggling with coming up with things that I wanted to paint. And then about, I'd say 3 to 5 days into school, I hadn't painted in any of those days, and my brain was just flooded with all of these new ideas and new imagery for things that I could paint. Granted, a lot of those things I've never painted, but the inspiration was there, the ideas were there. So sometimes you just need to take a break. Sometimes you've just overworked that imaginative part of your brain, I feel like, and it just needs a second to recuperate and come up with something else. I also wanted to talk about how I always get these ideas that I'm really excited about painting, but I feel like I don't really have the skill level for yet. So for example, there's this piece I'm working on right now. It is a piece I created based off the lyrics of a song, and I'm really, really proud of the concept. I've done the digital sketch, which I put a lot of time and effort to, and then I've transferred it onto a gesso board, and I want to paint it in acrylic and oil probably, but I just don't feel like I have enough experience with faces and skin tones with oil and acrylic to do the painting justice. And so I've been doing these color comps, and that's another thing I'm struggling with, is what skin tone I want and what I want the background to be like. Anyways, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put this piece as the next Watercolor Wednesday piece, and I'm going to do it as a watercolor painting first. Then I'm going to do some more color comps of it, and then I'm going to go into the bigger piece, because I don't want it sitting there for a year and me not finishing it like this other piece that I'm still working on that's been sitting there for a year. And this piece is just, it's a lot of water, it's a lot of sky, and those aren't things I'm bad at. It's just a very, very large piece, and it's been daunting to me for so long that I've just put it off and put it off and put it off, and now I finally want to work on it, but I also am still a little bit scared. So hopefully when that's finished, you'll see a time lapse of that. I have been recording it, and I like it quite a bit so far. It's still in its beginning stages, honestly. I'd like to finish it pretty soon, but I also have a ton of other things I'm working on. I'm doing these Watercolor Wednesdays every week, and I've been painting a lot of pendants, and I just got a lot of stuff going on. So hopefully I can work on that. My goal is to work on the bigger paintings that I'm doing, these bigger projects, once a week, and then hopefully in a few weeks' time we'll see quite a bit of progress. But I'm going to be going back to school in like the next month. We'll see how that goes with COVID, or what the deal is with online classes and whatnot. But anyway, yeah, this was just kind of me rambling. I hope you don't mind. I was really just talking. But yeah, here I am, and I'm drawing the last of the stars in, doing little shooting stars on the piece, and then it's pretty much done. Now I pull the tape off, which I like to film because I think it's pretty satisfying. But another thing I noticed about this paper is that when I pull the tape off, it often will like tear a layer of the paper off in very small areas. And I don't know if that's a paper thing or a tape thing, but regardless, all the paints I used will be in the description. The watercolor paper I used will be in the description. My links to my shop, to this piece and prints of this piece, will be in the description. Go ahead and check that out. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You know how that works. And I will see you next week. Have a good week, guys. Bye.